one thing I've had to grow out of was letting the sport define me, because it was such a big aspect of who I was and not just something that I do. And so when I thought like, oh my gosh, I can't run, like who am I without the sport? And I was like, I'm so many other things. I'm Caleb. I'm kind. I'm funny. You know, I sing. I can dance. There's so many other aspects that make up who I am. And so I had to also start separating track from me, that way that even in this recovery process that I wasn't getting frustrated that I wasn't back. Yeah. So I was able to just be like, yeah, I might not be back yet, but I will be. And in the meantime, how am I going to enjoy life until I maybe get back to something I want to do?
Exactly. Welcome to the third ever episode of the Life Play Podcast. If you missed the second with Nicole Erikson, the mental performance consultant, aka the mind coach, the link will be down below. Today, we have a very special guest and podcast for you all, which is legendary. And when I say legendary, I mean legendary. We have the very first male athlete brave enough to come on the Life Play Podcast and speak about mental health in sports. His name is Caleb CHEVIS. He is a track athlete at the University of Miami, but that's not just all he is. He is someone with many other talents. You will learn about them today. Thank you for joining us, Caleb.
Thank you for having me. It's awesome to be here.
You're definitely a brave guest because you're the first male athlete, like I mentioned before. And, you know, lots of male athletes, they don't want to talk about this conversation of mental health in sports or just mental health in life.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very important conversation that it needs to be had. Would you agree?
I completely agree. I think it's I think as a male it's severely underappreciated and talked about, and I think sometimes we try to just focus so much on the physical aspects of sports that we forget that the mental and emotional parts play almost more of a role than anything else. So it's really important to talk about it and have an understanding about it.
Exactly. Sure. And one thing that I noticed is that when you hold all these emotions in or thoughts in, it just eats you alive. So it's like, why would you not want to talk about it? If not on a podcast with a therapist, if not with a therapist, with your family members or a close friend. You know, all these things are great ways to just help you feel better, you know?
Sure.
And I feel like that's the main aspect of therapy and just speaking about these things, just to feel better. Yeah. You know, nobody wants to be just feel bad inside all the time. It's not healthy, and it just, who wants to do that?
Yeah, true.
So let's just hear about your backstory. You're from Dallas, Texas, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so
born and raised, Texas gang. All my Texas people out there. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your family and when you started running track.
Okay. Great mother and father, Bernard and Valerie CHEVIS, were two of the greatest people I've ever met in my life. And then I have older brother named Colby, and a twin sister named Caitlin. So we were, I think, a minute apart. So, but my family were very close. Family's such a really big, important thing to us. And we even talk on the phone and pray every day. And we've been doing that for pretty much since COVID started. So, that's really important to me. But I started running track. I played football first. And then when I was probably about 11 years old, even when I played football, all I liked to do was run. Yeah. For the most part anyway. And so then my dad was like, well, maybe we should get him in the track and stuff. And so my dad started me on a club team. So I still played football, but then I ran club track in the summer. And then it just kind of kept going from there. And eventually I stopped playing football, ran track high school, started taking it really seriously, and then took it to the collegiate level. And that's pretty much where I am now.
So before we even get to the collegiate level, let's talk about your high school track experiences and also your recruiting process. So just getting to this collegiate level, how was that whole process, and just competing, and I would guess at the highest level possible when you were in high school? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so in Texas, specifically the highest division is 6A, which is the most competitive. And the most competitive cities in Texas, I would say, are Dallas, Houston, and like maybe San Antonio. So I've always been on like, I guess the hot circuit. So there are a lot of like races where like I would win by like wide margins, but there were always like super competitive meets. Like to make it to the state meet, you had to be running some of the top times in the country. Like sometimes, honestly, to make it to state, you had to run almost faster than like collegiate people are running just to even get there. So it's extremely competitive. But I think I love the.
Quick sidebar. I remember when I was in high school and I ran track, right? For me, it was like the same type of thing. Like regular races in our division, I would smoke people.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty fast, you know? But then when it came to those big meets, nah. Like, these people actually aren't playing games.
No.
And, like, they're, like, a different level of fast that is unhuman-like in my eyes. Yeah. So I know exactly what you mean.
It's crazy competitive. Like, especially once I got to the collegiate circuit and I would talk to people about like high school and they'd be like, so how many times did you go to state? I went 2-3 times. And I'm like, oh, what's your PR? Like, what's your personal best? And then like, they're significantly slower than me, but they've been to state all these times. And I'm like, I've never even been really even close to going to state just because of how competitive it was in Texas. But I think it builds a lot of awareness and character, especially like going into college, because you see that you're not going to win every race. Yeah. You're not going to always just be the fastest and the best. And so you learn to lose at an early age so that when you may lose in college, you're not like super like upset about it or like it's not something you've never experienced. So then you can really learn from each race, grow, and then just compete and have fun with it, because it's not always about a win or lose. It's more about just doing what you love. Yeah. Wait, to touch on go ahead.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. You said it's not always about a win and lose. I read this book, the sports psychology book. They said instead of looking at things like win or lose, look at it like a win or learn.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
That's it.
So instead of, okay, I lost this race, I'm complete failure, all these things, thinking negative about yourself, look at it as, okay, what did I do that could have stopped me from winning this race? Yeah. Or what can I change to allow me to run better the next time? Things like that. Yeah. And I see that you learned that in high school, or even in high school, you said, right? Yeah. So that was super, super big, a very big aspect of the mental side of sports that you really were able to lock into. And would you say that really helped you for the next level?
Oh, 100%. Once you get to the collegiate circuit, it's just, there's hardly a meet that you go to where it's not super competitive, especially now that I'm at Miami. And so one thing I had to learn was, and then, another thing is that it's taken more seriously. Track and field at this point now it's a business. As much as it's like something that we do for fun because we love it, like these coaches are paid to coaches. These coaches are, this is their livelihood. So the school, everybody takes it so much more seriously.
See, Jacey Hinton, who I had on episode 1 of the Life Play podcast, she said the same exact thing. She said, everybody looks at you like you're a representation of the school.
100%.
Like you said, this is a business. We're not playing games anymore. Not at all. So that's where that added pressure can come on as an athlete. Yeah. So.
Yeah, which I mean sometimes can be like sometimes hard to manage and handle, but I think one of the biggest things that I've seen people around me and even myself do is just like reminding ourselves of why we do this. Because the further you get, like once you get like past collegiate, once you're on the pro circuit, then it's even more serious.
Exactly.
And so at that point, like it becomes more so like for like right now, it's not my livelihood. But if I were to do it professionally, that would be my form of currency. This is how I pay my bills and stuff. Yeah. And so it constantly builds and builds and builds. So then it becomes a matter of pressure management. And if you don't really, really love the sport, then I think the best time to probably stop is in high school. Yeah. Because otherwise, collegiate and pro, it's just so much harder. And the last thing you want to do is lose love for the sport, because it's a great one. So.
And I'm glad you mentioned you have to have a motivated factor that's more than just, I like to run track. It's really like, what is your why? Yeah. And your why has to be much deeper. So what would you say your why is?
That's a good question. I would say I just love to feel fast. Like just the feeling of like when I take off and I'm like just going and I can just feel my body moving at like max velocity. It's not even about am I gonna run this time, or are people watching me? It's not. It's honestly nothing about that. It's just about the simple fact that I just love to feel my body go that fast. Even when I played football, like I did, I either played running back or like cornerback or defense. And my favorite parts of the game was when I got to run somebody down or run super fast down the field, because I just love to move fast. And I think getting back to the basis of like why I even love to run makes me understand more why I love track, because track is just the timed version of something that I love to do anyway.
Yeah.
So.
No, I love that, and I can tell, as you mentioned before, you said you just like to run.
Yeah, just like to
so, that really changes the way you look at these races. You're just like, okay, I'm not worried about the crowd. I'm not worried about the pressure that school gives on me. I actually genuinely love to run.
Yeah.
And like you said, the velocity of your body slicing through the wind.
Yeah.
And also, what would you say that I know that you mentioned that you talk to your family every day?
Every single day.
Every single day.
Yeah.
So how does you being in such good communication with your family affect how you view your life as an athlete, and just view your wins and losses in your sport in general?
That's an interesting question. I think because I talk with them so much, they know me better than anyone. And so they know when I'm off. They know when something has affected me, or like they know like when I'm really happy, or when I'm happy with the practice, with like if I win a race. They know if I maybe lost a race, or if I learned from a race. they know, they can just see where I am. And I think it's so important, just because sometimes being that like I'm me. So having someone else that can see you, that can like know your cues and know when you're not okay, sometimes it's helpful, because they help you acknowledge the things that you try to ignore, or the things that you like don't even realize that is affecting you. Exactly. So I think that communication has just been really important. And like some people may not have it with family, like I also kind of have it with my friends too, and like we're getting to a point now where even they notice those things as well. So it really just helps with kind of just like, I guess I would call it mental management.
Yeah.
Of just like, where am I after this race? Even if it wasn't maybe my best race, do I have people around me that can build me up, or give their input, or like just like be there and support?
Yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned they help build you up, right? Because would you say that after you talk to your family, your friends, your twin sister, as you mentioned, that they help you not to take these maybe these angers or the sadness out on other things and other people? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of doing that and lashing out, or just letting these things affect you negatively, would you say that these support systems really help shift these negative and sad times into positive times?
Oh, 100%. I think, wow, that's a really good question. Wow. Yeah, they really do. I, like even the other day, matter of fact, last night I was talking to my parents, and I had kind of had a bad practice yesterday, and my mom was just talking about vision, and just how sometimes, like even if we close our eyes, we can see things sometimes with our eyes closed that we can't even see with our eyes open. Like for instance, my eyes are open right now. What I see is that camera. But if I close my eyes, I can see myself winning the ACC title. I can see myself running at nationals.
That's visualization.
Yeah, so we were just like talking about how vision is not just tied to what we see right in front of us. And so for me, having a bad practice yesterday, and then realizing that like what I saw in that practice is not necessarily representation of what will happen in the future. Yeah. I don't really remember my point there.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, I forgot what we were talking about.
No, but either way, you mentioned things like visualization and just the help of someone like your parents on helping you notice that these practices don't define who you are as a runner, don't define who you are as a person especially. Yeah. So, like you said, that visualization is such an important aspect of sports psychology.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think that lots of athletes should do more.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, they can turn that negative practice into, okay, that's not going to affect me because that doesn't define me. I have lots of other successes, and I have a big opportunity to do a lot better tomorrow in practice. Or next week in my meet. You see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So visualization is a big sports psychology technique that lots of people should learn, and it makes all the difference. I don't know if I mentioned this. I mentioned it on a different podcast, but Klay Thompson, he was talking about his visualization techniques, and I just saw a video of him the other day, right? This was way before one of their games, right? He's literally just walking on the field, like going through the shooting motions, no basketball, acting like he's coming off of a pick, right? He's walking too, not even fast. He's walking, he's coming off the pick, acting like he's shooting, watching it go through, things like that. Another person, Patrick Mahomes, said he does it too. He said he drops back, he acts like a defender is coming towards him. He might shake him off. He might see Tyreek Hill, or he's not even on their team anymore, but one of their wide receivers, and then passing it to him. The visualization is so beneficial to your performance as an athlete.
It's monumentally important, and I think one of the best things that Miami has started, at least for my team, is like we've had these mental health workshops, and that was something that we talked about today.
I love that.
Was just like visualizing like things in every detail, like visualizing your race, your warm up, how's it gonna go, and like not necessarily manifesting it, but seeing it before you have to do it. That way
it easier.
It makes it easier. Plus, like when you already have that in your head, then when you're in the race, you're not necessarily thinking about it, but it's still right there in that working memory. And so now you're simply just applying what you've been thinking about it. Like, but I mean, there is like a range with that though, because you don't want to overthink and then you're, so in your head that you can't perform. But I think there's a healthy level of visualization that everyone should do before competition in sports.
That visualization should take away most of those thoughts so that you can just flow. That flow state really allows you to just, there's not much thought involved, and that's when you perform at your best.
For sure.
But I want to go back in time to one of my earlier questions as we were talking about your high school journey, right? So after you were doing good in high school and you started getting recruited by colleges, where did you go from that next step?
So my recruiting process was a bit different than everyone else's. So I didn't know about like the NCAA eligibility center, and like there's certain things that you have to fill out and like certify in so that coaches can actually speak to you and recruit you. So I mean, I had just been getting like letters from colleges saying like to fill out like questionnaires, like generic stuff, but I didn't realize that was the only way that they could communicate with me because I wasn't in the center, and the coaches that I had at the school at the time, they didn't know much, and furthermore, they didn't care. So once I finally found out about that, I got in the eligibility center, but this was spring of my senior year. So by this point, like everybody else started talking about where they're going to school and stuff, and I'm like, I haven't even taken a visit, and most people start doing that their junior year. So it was just a different journey for me, but I started talking with some different schools in Texas. I think I filled out a questionnaire from Miami. Little did I know I would end up here. And then Texas State was a big one. University of Arkansas at Little Rock, which I ended up attending for my first 2 years of school. But I would say it was an atypical journey from how most people go about it normally. Most people by like fall of their senior year have taken their college visits. They either have committed or know where they're gonna go and going into their spring season. But that wasn't the case for me. And honestly, I'm okay with that because one thing I've learned is sometimes your timetable isn't like other people's timetable isn't yours. And at the end of the day, like, I can say maybe I wanted a different recruiting process, but that process led me to Arkansas, which eventually led me to Miami, and here I am now doing what I love and enjoying it. So it's like grateful for I'm grateful for the process, even though it was not necessarily a normal one. So that's one thing if I would encourage anybody, it's just like know your options and like have people around you who also know how to get you recruited, because especially now with like the transfer portal and everything, it's just so much harder to get recruited out of high school. So I think it's really important to have like I said, just people around you that know the system and know, okay, these are people to talk to. This is what you do when a coach reaches out to you, and just like knowing like what right things to look for when getting recruited and picking a university to spend your undergrad at.
I'm glad you mentioned that because everybody runs their own race. And everybody has their own journey. So you can't look to the person to the right of you, to the left of you. Like you said, some people were saying that they were winning every state meet. You were winning every state meet. Or losing every state meet. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you guys ended up in the same place.
Exactly.
So it doesn't matter how you get there. Everybody's journey isn't the same. So it's like you have to appreciate life for what it is. Appreciate the journey that God has set you on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
For sure.
And you being, would you say that you're a religious person?
Oh yeah, very much so. I take, I kind of hate the term religious because usually religious is so associated with tradition. So like, for example, it's like, oh, I go to church, 3 times a week, and I or I'm in this choir, and I take up the offering or something. I try to think of it more like I'm more spiritually in tune with God, and I think that's just more important of like having an individual relationship with God, like still going to church, still like doing stuff like that, but not letting it. I think sometimes Christians specifically, we get so fixated in the ritualistic of I go to church here, but then there's no real change, there's no growth because you're just going through the motions. To me, that's no different than if I go to class every day, I don't take notes, I don't pay attention, I'm just sitting in a classroom and I learn nothing, I gain nothing. There's no growth in knowledge, there's no growth in me as a student. So furthermore, when I go to church or not even outside of church, it's like, what am I doing to further along my spiritual journey? Because I think all of it's connected. And I think one of the biggest things that I've even seen just like in my collegiate experience is just my own like growth with God and just how much better I've handled things that I've been through, just because like I've had a lot of different injuries and some that were really bad. And some days I remember one time my mom, she asked me, she's like, Caleb, you're so calm. She's like, you're so at peace. How is that? And I'm like, it's God. Because Lord knows I would be kicking and screaming and punching a wall and stuff. But God especially has helped me just learn how to center in. And he's a really big source of just like my peace and comfort. And it just helps me to manage hard times and situations that maybe would break other people. So, yeah. Yeah,
I love that. And you mentioned your injuries, right? So what injuries did you have and at what time?
Oh yeah, so my freshman year I didn't really have anything. Most like, especially like being sprinting, like you might have a little hamstring, like a little pull or something. That's usually not bad. But my freshman year I didn't really have any, but that was also like, I only ran indoor that year because that's when COVID hit and everything got crazy. My sophomore year it was my freshman season, but I was a sophomore in college at the time. I was running indoor. I strained, it's like a muscle on the kind of like the side of your tibia called your EDO. I think it's extensor digitorum longus. Which that pretty much messed up the rest of my indoor. And then we transitioned to outdoor. I was fine by that point. And then, funny story, I was on Little Rock's team and I came to run at Miami. And so I ran 4x1 and we won that, which was cool. And then I was running the 200 and I was in lane 8, which is like not my favorite lane, but you gotta run where you are. And then I ended up, it felt like my shoe broke, but I actually had a partial tear on my plantar fascia, which is like around the arch of your foot. And so like, I was like, the rest of my race was like dejected, but what's crazy is like, I still came to Miami, even though like more or less that was like a source of trauma. But that's just 2 of them. And then this past year, I got diagnosed in the summer with the grade 4 stress fracture on my tibia, which is like for a short sprinter especially, it's just like really, really hard to come back from. It's just like everything I do is really like power and speed based, and like the tibia is the major weight bearing bone of the lower leg. So that's honestly been a journey that I've still been coming back from, even now. But yeah, it's not fun being injured, but I've been able to. The funny thing is that I've had little moments of things that just like remind me why I love the sport. So like for instance, like our school, we did like a inter squad meet, so they split our team in two, and we all like, competed against each other in our team uniforms. So it was just like for a fun thing, kind of like a time trial as well. And I couldn't run in it, so I'm watching all of my teammates compete, wishing I was out there. But then as I'm watching them run, I remember like, oh, I love doing that. I'm like, oh, that's like I know I want to be doing that because I love to do it.
Yeah.
And so I think an important thing for injuries, just like remembering that, like, yeah, like the situation sucks, but there's always like little like blips of moments of like inspiration that can just like keep you on that path of like, I got to get back to this.
Yeah.
Like I can heal, I can recover, I can get back to doing what I love just like anybody else can.
So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. You have those times of inspiration where you are like, okay, I am going to be back from this injury. Were there ever any times where you're thinking like, man, I don't know, like?
Yeah, so I think all of my other injuries, I pretty much know I was gonna come back from. The stress fracture, and even the doctor said, like, he said grade 4 is the worst they rated, but if they had to give it a higher one, they would. And I remember that day so vividly. I was still in Miami. All of my friends had gone home for summer break, and I was living by myself at the time, and it was raining that day. And I remember, going to the little hospital on campus, and them telling me all this stuff. And I remember having to go home by myself. I didn't have any friends around. They were all gone. And it was horrible. And I called, I think I called my dad. I was just bawling my eyes out on my living room floor because it was just like, I had tried. So I think the hard thing is that sometimes the people who you see have the most success in track are sometimes horrible people.
Yeah.
And I think like, at least I try my best to be a pretty good person. So just to know that like, I sow good seeds, I work hard, I train hard, and to have, a doctor pretty much tell me that you have this pretty much career-ending injury, it was just really hard news to take. And that first period where it happened, it was raining outside. The sky was gloomy. It was like literally one of the worst days I've experienced. Yeah. And I had a moment where I was just telling my dad all of my frustrations. I was screaming. I was just letting it all out. But then I had to remind myself, I'm like, okay, this can do one of two things. I'm like, this can either take me out of the sport completely, or I can start taking the steps to find my way back. And so by the end of that conversation, I was telling my dad, like, I'm not done.
Yeah.
I was like, I know I know it's horrible, and like I'm scared, and like this is a hard thing to deal with, but I've got to find my way back. I was like, this is just like, adversity comes, and I'm like, wouldn't this be like the greatest comeback story ever? To come back from all these injuries and stuff and then end up running well. So that's just what I started doing. So I just started orienting my mind around, how do I get back? Where do I go from here? And like learning how to just take little pleasures out of each day. And because like I think sometimes, and one thing I've had to grow out of was letting the sport define me, because it was such a big aspect of who I was and not just something that I do. And so when I thought like, oh my gosh, I can't run, like who am I without the sport? And I was like, I'm so many other things. I'm Caleb, I'm kind, I'm funny, I sing, I can dance, there's so many other aspects that make up who I am. And so I had to also start separating track from me, that way that even in this recovery process that I wasn't getting frustrated that I wasn't back. Yeah. So I was able to just be like, yeah, I might not be back yet, but I will be. And in the meantime, how am I going to enjoy life until I maybe get back to something I want to do?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So during that time, would you say that that's where you really started to hone in more on your talents of singing? Or
a little.
Maybe not, because that was always a love of yours, correct?
Yeah, for sure.
So would you say that during that time where you weren't able to play your sport that you love, right?
Yeah.
Were you able to, like you said, you looked around and you were like, I have these other talents. that this sport doesn't define me. Even if I'm not playing these sports, I still am Caleb with these many talents.
Yeah.
So I saw on your Instagram you sold it. I mean, I say you sold. You sung at some football games and different games on campus and at different places. Was that during that time?
I sang at some track meets in the spring, which was when the stress fracture was happening. I was still running on it, which is a marvel in itself. But yeah, I sang at some meets there. Even this fall, like I haven't been able to necessarily run that much. I am now, but at the time I wasn't, and I sang at Hard Rock Stadium. It was a Miami versus Duke game, which was just a surreal experience. It was
That's
just
fine.
no, it was really cool. And I was really grateful for the opportunity. But to answer your question, I think I relied on what singing has always done for me a bit more. I think I really just pulled on the I feel like track is kind of how I express like my physical being, so like how hard I work, how like, it's kind of like how I express like the genetics and stuff that I've been given to run fast and do that. But singing is kind of how I express some of the inner things that maybe I don't want to talk about. Sometimes I can just sing it out, and that's always been really helpful. So especially when I was hurt, I was just singing all the time. I had to, because I couldn't work out. I couldn't run. I would have all these different doctor's appointments to try to figure stuff out, and it's summer break, so I don't have classes. I don't have friends to distract me. It's just pretty much me and myself at home. So it's like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, are you gonna sit there and just fall deeper into this pit, or are you going to do something that you love to build yourself up? So I just started singing all the time. Granted, to be fair, I always sing, like regardless of like injury or not. But it did remind me that my success as a person is not just tied to track. And so like, I know that I have academic success. I have started doing more stuff with singing, and I think they're trying to, I think we're working on maybe getting me to sing at a Miami Heat game.
Jeez.
So I'm trying to really, singing is something that I definitely want to take it as far as I can. But it's really been such a lifeline, especially through like an injury process. So
yeah, I actually love that. See, I was always somebody who, like, I wish I could sing. Like, I wish I could just bust out and just hit certain pitches and tones. And like, don't get me wrong, I love to sing. Might not sound the best, but I love to sing myself. But yeah, that's a great talent to have. Like I've been practicing the piano lately.
Okay.
Like I've always wanted to play the piano, but I never actually sat down and took the time to learn how to play the piano. So I've really been working on trying to do that. That's just one little musical thing that I've been trying to do.
I think everybody can join music. I think there's something for everybody. Like even like you said, like maybe you don't think like you're the best singer or whatever. Like, okay, you can play the piano. Some people learn orchestral instruments. Like there's so many other things you can do. But one thing I've always told my friends, like we'll be in the car singing and stuff, but sometimes they'll feel insecure about singing because they hear me singing, and I'm like, no, keep going. Because I'm not judging you. And furthermore, singing, because of how therapeutic it is for me, I know that like it can really help other people too. So I would be the last person to tell somebody, oh, don't sing because you don't sound good. Or like, no, I don't care if you sound like a dying cat. Like, if this is something that brings you relief and joy and happiness, especially like in the times we live in, like, please, for the love of God, sing.
Exactly, let it out.
Let it out.
Exactly.
See?
I feel you, man.
So yeah, singing is something that anybody and everybody should do. Like, even if it's in the shower, in the car, like, even if you're not comfortable singing in front of other people, just sing.
Yeah.
Because it is like, sometimes, like, there's some things you just can't say with words. Like, you can't just, like, some things I can't just talk out. I have to sing it. Because then that's the only way that I can really feel like I'm really expressing it and letting it out. So.
Yeah, I definitely feel you on that. Because I always say I have like, music just gives me a different type of feeling. Like, it's something that, for me, it's usually listening to music and singing music that I know. Maybe not singing my own type of songs or whatever, but singing the music that I know, it really does something for me, and I feel it completely different. I don't even know what the feeling is, but I feel it.
You know what? Something interesting is not a lot of men are comfortable enough to admit how much, like, music impacts him, which I think is funny because these are the same guys that, oh yeah, I'm hard, I listen to all that, I listen to Young Boy and Drake and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, cool, but why are you acting like music isn't a big part of your life too? Like, just because maybe, I sing or something and it may not be the most masculine thing to people, I don't care. But it's like, just because it's a different aspect of music or a different expression of music doesn't mean that you don't love music just as much as I do.
Exactly.
So I kind of hate that whole like pretender thing that people do is like, I listen to the hard stuff, whatever. I'm like, dude, you listen to the music that makes you feel better. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing that I do. It's not really any different.
Yeah. Lots of people try to lie to other people, to the public, just because of their own insecurities.
Yeah. For sure.
So that's a funny thing.
Yeah.
People like to portray an outside picture of themselves when intrinsically it may be completely different. True. And it's pretty much for the validation of other people. And I can tell you're someone, I'm someone, I don't care about the validation of another person because that's not going to make me feel intrinsically good.
Yeah.
Everybody who puts on paints a picture of a person that they're not, inside deep down they're not putting out their true self.
Yeah.
So they don't feel their complete best. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure. And one thing I've learned because I used to be really self-conscious. I used to always be worried about what are people gonna say, what do they think, just because like I'm very eccentric as a person. I'm very expressive and just like all this stuff, and like especially when I get excited, my voice just like it shoots through the roof. So there was just I had to learn that like I live in this body.
Yeah.
Like I'm the one that has to, when everybody else is gone, who am I with? Myself.
Exactly.
Like I had to learn how like I live in this body. I am this being, and I'm not going to let people who really don't in the grand scheme of things matter that much, or like don't really have a big effect on me as a person. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to let them put me in a box where I feel like I have to contain things about myself that I love about myself. Like I'm not going to do that. Yeah. So if I come outside and I want to wear some red pants or something because I like the color red and I like these pants, I'm going to wear them because I dress for me, I move for me, I do the things that I love, I do that for me.
Yeah. And
I think that's like so important. It's like when people start doing stuff for others, then you're never truly doing what you love. You're doing what they love you to do. Mm-hmm. And I think like that's not real happiness, and like you can't really grow from a place like that. I think the place that you really grow from is like a way I like to look at it is like when you're playing a video game, you have it unlocks the character, and so it's like that black icon. I feel like the more that you grow and learn about yourself, the more that you're unlocking that character. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like
you're gaining more and more importance of unlocking your true
identity, your true self.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. And I think it's just the healthiest place to be in, because like the more you do that, then the more you can be aware of your physical health, your mental health, and like you learn more about yourself and who you should be friends with, who you should connect with, and just even how like how your life should go. It's just a better place to be in my opinion.
I know exactly what you mean. Like I'm somebody just like you. If I'm not like putting out the person I actually am, expressing my actual feelings, saying what I actually feel or mean, it will eat me up inside. So it's like, am I going to allow myself to be unhappy or other people to be unhappy that I am the way that I am?
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Completely.
It's like, I'm always going to choose my own internal peace over anybody else.
Yeah.
Forget what they think. And then another thing is that lots of people will, no matter what you do, somebody will have something to say.
For sure.
So it's like, you can change everything about yourself, change things to make it seem like you're a certain way that one group of people like, but then there's another group of people who don't like it.
True.
And they will talk about it too. So then it's like, you never win.
No.
So there's no point.
Yeah.
Just be your true authentic self, and that's how you will be the happiest.
Yeah. Like haters gonna hate.
Haters
gonna hate. People are always going to have something to say. And you know what? One thing, I always consider it flattery, because if people never have anything to say about you, then you're not doing anything. Mm-hmm. But I feel like when you're actually being your true self and making strides to be successful in whatever arena suits you. I feel like there's always going to be those people that like, some people are always, oh, I love what you're doing, and there's also going to be the people like, oh, I don't really like that guy, whatever. And that just comes with the territory. But I think what's so important is not being affected by what other people say. I think now, to be fair, I think now if one of my close friends were to say like, Caleb, I hate when you sing, I'd be like, whoa, chill. Because like, honestly, at that point, that's almost like a compatibility issue.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, like if it's not like a close friend, family member or someone, then like, don't really care what people, don't really care what people think, because most of those people aren't even going to be in your life that long. They don't really, and they only have as much impact as you allow.
Yeah.
So that's why that's something I work on daily. It's just like constantly reminding myself that like, I am me and I have to live with me. So what more steps can I take to bettering the version of myself that I want to be?
Exactly.
And that way, however people feel with it, they can just deal with it, because it's their problem with me, not a problem that I have with me.
Yeah. And another thing is, everybody literally sees the world completely different.
True.
Even though you have a twin sister, you and your twin sister still see the world completely different.
100%.
Exactly. So it's like, if everybody processes what we see, what we hear, what we think completely different, it's like you're never going to match the same exact frequency as someone else.
True.
So it's like you need to embrace those uniqueness, those unique qualities about yourself, and move accordingly.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to, I love the fact that you said that singing was a great way for you to get out of holes during your injury, right? In the future, when the Life Play turns into a practice, I would love to have a physical therapy part of the Life Play, where we have psychologists right there with the physical therapists and the athletes to help them.
Okay.
Because people don't think about how important the mental aspect of coming back from an injury is. Like you can physically train it, yes. But say you come back and you aren't confident enough to make the same movements that you did when you weren't injured.
Yeah.
That can hinder your ability to perform, things like that. So how important would you say the mental aspect of coming back from an injury is?
It's, honestly, on a scale, it's immeasurable. I think, and this is just me speaking from personal experience, but like coming back from injury, there's probably the biggest element is confidence and fear, because sometimes you come back from injury and you're like, I'm just so ready to get back to it. So like you feel confident, you're like, yeah, I got this. And then, you may re-injure it or something. Cause like sometimes the dangerous thing is that we can ignore what our body's telling us because we're trying to like just get back to it. But then there's also that element of fear where it's like even for me, like when I was first starting back running, and like the trainers are like, yeah, you're ready for this. You're ready to start running back on the track. You're ready to start, putting your feet to the ground again and really running fast. And like there was just those little fears in the back of your head. That's like, oh my gosh, what if I hurt it again? What if I refracture my bone? And what if I don't have a good season? It's just like all of those what ifs. But I think the best way to navigate that is just to take it a day at a time and just feel your body, feel where you are, even feel where your mind is, and just like, and communicate that with your coaches and just be like, coach, I've got to be honest, like I'm a little nervous about this workout. And then hopefully you have a coach that reassures you that, like you're fine. Let's just see how it goes. Let's just take it step by step. But even to like your point about like having like therapists with the physical therapist at Life, I think that's just so important. I think honestly underappreciated, because I've had therapists and trainers who have just been like, they focus just on like getting you back physically, that you're literally just at that point you're an object, you're a machine. You're just a machine that they're patching up the parts so that it can be back functioning again. But the thing is about a machine is that there's no emotion, there's no brain, there's no life there.
That's the unique thing about a human being.
Exactly. And I feel like when you neglect that part, then you're patching up the physical being, but the mental, like for instance, like for my issue, stress fracture, my bone was fractured. yeah, you can patch up that bone, but if my brain and my heart is still broken, more or less, then it doesn't really matter how much you fix my leg. I'll probably never get back to being the athlete I could be because I didn't fix up here.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just really important to have that duality aspect, because honestly, coming back from injury, most, especially young athletes, like it's coming back from injury is almost like expected. But if you don't start to deal with the mental and emotional traumas that come from an injury, then even though you get back to sport, if you get hurt again, you could spiral worse. You could have like worse depression. Like it could affect you worse because you haven't even dealt with the first issue, because you were just like, okay, let me just get back to my sport so that I can please my coach and I can maintain my scholarships and all this stuff. And it just grows and grows and grows, instead of it just being like, okay, I'm fixing my physical, fixing my mental, fixing my emotional, putting that all together so that I can not just be the best athlete, but be the best person I can be, because those two things really do correlate.
Exactly. They really do correlate. And another thing that correlates with all of that, like you mentioned, is how your coaches and your physical therapists, how they speak to you. So how would you, what would you say is one of the most important things about coaching? Because another thing about the Life Play, we're definitely going to teach coaches all the sports psychology techniques to get the best performance out of your players.
Yeah.
Because I grew up with some coaches that, you know, they made things much more harder, I would say. But then when you have that coach, like my senior year, shout out Coach Bo from Archbishop Carroll, great guy. Other than just a coach, great guy, because him as a coach was just as him as a person. He was a caring person who knew how to communicate well, who wasn't just yelling at you for no reason, or wasn't just a narcissist, or, you know, all these things. So a coach who knows how to speak to his players, one, can keep his players engaged, keep his players having trust in him. And like I said before, getting the best performance out of his players. So would you say that you had some coaches along your journey that really were like just great people?
Oh yeah, I've had plethora. I mean, from my club coaches, shout out to Coach Don Griffin, Coach Ray Jones, Chris Capo, I'm trying to think of some other ones. One of my most instrumental coaches for like club high school, Coach Greg Scholes, who I still train with now, and even like Coach Diego, who's no longer at Miami, and Coach Hunter, who I'm training under now. All are people who really knew how to talk to me, and I think that's really important, is like meeting athletes where they are, because we all come from different backgrounds, different places, different families, different upbringings. Like all of our experiences are so diversely unique that I feel like as a coach you have to take the time to learn your athlete and also meet them where they are. And I think sometimes the dangerous thing, especially for men in sports, is that coaches neglect that sometimes like we might not be okay, just like mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever the case may be, and so we get a lot of that push through it. You know, just deal with it. Because now, to the contrary, I've had a lot of great coaches, but I've also had some bad coaches who were like, oh, you're fine. I remember I was in high school and I got hurt. And I mean, it was crazy. I just placed third in like our district track meet, and I was like a sophomore, which was like pretty unheard of at the time. And I pulled my hamstring at the end of the race. I told my coach, I'm like, there's no way I can run. Like my hamstring it hurts. I have a knot. Like it's really bad. And he was like, oh, just push through it. So I ended up running the 4x4 with a pulled hamstring, and I limped all the way around the track, and I was crying, my mom screaming and crying. You know, it was just a horrible experience, just because there was just that toxic masculinity thing. Like, here we go again with the toxic masculinity of just telling an athlete, oh, you're fine, push through it, toughen up, da-da-da-da. I'm like, no, it's not always that simple. And like, like sometimes like there has to be mental fortitude. Sometimes you have to push through adversity, you have to push through fatigue, all that stuff. But there does come a point where you're like, we're human beings. Our body minds can sometimes only take so much. And when you have coaches that don't recognize that and don't, you know, try to help you facilitate that, then you risk having an athlete who you may have gotten to perform well, but when they're done with the sport, they are a fraction of a human being.
Yeah.
And that's just like literally the worst thing. So I think it's really important for coaches to not only understand the mental health aspect of sports, but to not invalidate the feelings and the perspectives of their athletes, but to listen, hear them, and then either provide counsel or provide somewhere where they can go to see someone to get help and help them to get better.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad you said that, because I had another really good coach. Shout out Coach Bob. He's actually Cam Reddish's father. He's on the New York Knicks right now. He went to Duke, but he used to ask, "Are you hurt or are you injured?" Because, like you mentioned, the mental fortitude, you can push through maybe your legs hurt because you're running a long race.
Yeah.
Something like that, right? But then there comes a place, like you mentioned, you pulled your hamstring. That's an injury.
Yeah.
That's completely different than, oh, my leg just hurts.
Yeah.
You know, I'm actually like physically hurt to the point where there's something going on in my leg where it's inhibiting like me even moving my leg.
Yeah.
It's not as important. It's not as simple as just I'm hurt.
Yeah.
So someone like Coach Bob, him even asking that question, thinking about it now, I just now realized that I appreciate that, because that's not him just saying like, "Oh, you're fine, suck it up."
Yeah.
Like he was someone who will sometimes tell you just suck it up.
Yeah.
If you're hurt.
Yeah.
If you're genuinely injured, he's gonna be like, "Okay, sit down."
Yeah.
Like, take the time that you need to feel better.
Yeah.
And I appreciate him for that. And I'm just now noticing that.
Yeah, no, it's a very big difference between are you hurt and are you injured. It's an actual evaluation, because like, especially like running and stuff, there's some workouts that like your whole body's gonna be hurting. Like your arms, your back, your legs, like you feel like you can't even really walk without just being in pain. But sometimes that's just the fatigue of working out. That's just the fatigue of getting better, which is just that temporary pain.
Exactly.
But there are times where coach, I'm hurt,
and injured.
And sorry,
You're
right?
injured.
Come on, terminology, coach. I'm injured, and I feel like the coaches I have now are like so good about like asking those questions, which again, it just boils down to just like knowing how to speak to an athlete and just actually, instead of just always trying to be just like, pedal to the metal all the time, understanding that like sometimes different athletes may, like somebody like we have one guy on our team, like he doesn't really have to ever really do like rehab and stuff. He never really gets hurt. He always seems like he can just go. I'm not one of those people. So I appreciate that my coach even knows the difference between us and knows that like, okay, Caleb can't do everything that this guy can do. Caleb maybe needs to just take it back a little bit. Not that Caleb can't run just as fast, not that Caleb doesn't have the same potential, but just because Caleb's a different person, Caleb has a different body, different build, etc. So
emotionally and physically, everyone has individual needs.
Yeah.
And that's something that coaches can sometimes overlook.
100%.
They overlook the individual needs of each player. They just look at the team as a whole. They're like, oh, if this player can do it, you should be able to do it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, maybe that player genetically we're different.
Yeah.
Maybe genetically, emotionally, and genetically, physically. Some people may be genetically just more emotional, or some people may be genetically more calm.
Yeah.
So like I said before, everyone's different. People can't go around in life thinking that everyone should be the same.
Yeah.
Everyone should be like me. Everyone should be like you. Everyone should be like this one player on the team.
Yeah.
That's not real life.
Yeah. But see, that's the thing is like, especially like Miami, our men's team isn't that big. And like my coach has the time to individually like whatever. But when you go to like these like bigger schools, Texas, LSU, or just like schools that have like a really big population, really big teams and programs, it's to the coach's defense, it's harder to take that time for every individual athlete.
But that's why you should have companies like the Life Play to come and supply their staff with mental performance professionals, therapists, all those things, because I understand that a small coaching staff can't look over everybody.
Yeah.
But that's why the Life Play staffing these colleges, these universities, these sports teams, these professional teams,
Yeah.
they can make all the difference for the performance of your teams.
Yeah. No, that's very true, and I think like that would be so helpful because then it's not as much on the coach to like have to hold all that weight. Like they get to, like okay, like someone like a coach may be busy, they may be having to deal with 30, 40 athletes, and then you're coming to them like, hey coach, this is what's going on, and like it can be some heavy stuff and be like, I want to deal with this. I validate you. I want to have this conversation, but I've got 40 other athletes I have to attend to as well right now. But we have professionals who we work with who can also help you in this area, and then relay it back to me. But I think the hard thing is like different from other sports. Track and field is like you're not playing time, but your competition time usually depends on how fast you perform. Not how fast, but how well you've performed already, based off of a margin, a number. But sports like say football, basketball, like you might have stats, but at the end of the day, it depends on the coaches of that program who decide who plays and who's benched.
Yeah.
And so I think, like I feel for like football athletes, volleyball, basketball, men and women's, is just realizing that like sometimes it may be hard to have those conversations with your coach and tell them like, hey coach, like I'm not straight, like this is whatever, this is going on, like I'm not okay. And then because at that point, if you have a coach that maybe isn't understanding or maybe doesn't care that much, could be like, well, let me put this person in and you're benched, and you may never see the court again just because they just have that position where they can decide that, oh, this person isn't strong enough to handle this thing, then like whatever. And I've seen that more with probably football than anything else, especially when I played. So I think maybe changing that narrative, or even in the hiring process, like hiring coaches that can understand that like a person's mental health for a season does not define them as an athlete, and that just because like maybe they have a rough couple of weeks doesn't mean that they can't maybe not still perform, and maybe they can't, without taking some time off, get back to where they need to be. So I just think that would be like really helpful.
I think it would be great for if they started hiring coaches and really screening coaches for these characteristics beforehand. Because it's not until these players come to their coaches and with these problems that they actually notice that, okay, this coach doesn't know how to deal with players that may have certain mental health issues or just certain characteristics that they might not be used to. You know what I mean? So I want to transition into your future, and where you see yourself in the future. So right now you're a junior at Miami. And what's your major?
Pre-physical therapy with a minor in psychology.
See, I love that. So where do you see yourself, let's say, after you graduate?
After I graduate. So far, my plan is to go to PT school. I'm thinking about probably doing that in Texas just because cost of living down here is insane. And Texas, the housing market and just like even gas is just cheaper. Plus like my family's there. Like I have my grandparents and they're getting older, so I'd like to be a little closer because I mean, without a flight, Miami's a 19-hour drive from where I live. So it's like I can't just, I can't make that every weekend or whatever. So it would just be more convenient to be maybe a little closer to home. So I want to go to PT school, do my residency, get my physical therapy degree so I can work with athletes. And then my coach back at Fort Worth, Texas has like a facility where he like trains professional athletes, and like they plan on like they're turning it's like a performance ranch, but they're gonna like build a hotel out there. They already have like a track certified through like USATF and stuff, and so they're really like building this facility. And so my plan is by the time I get my degree is, if they don't already have some type of athletic training or physical therapy practice, to start that up there. Just because like at that point, like you need it, because you would be able to bring so many more athletes here if they knew that like, yeah, I can train at this amazing facility while also taking care of my physical therapy needs, doing my rehab, etc. and stuff, and having like another place to do that. So that's like, that is my reasonable, realistic plan. Then there's also like kind of like the dream plan. So the dream plan used to be, I'm not even gonna let myself say that. I'm not gonna do that. The dream plan is take track as far as I can, which still is the plan. If I was looking at it from a realistic perspective, it'd be like after collegiate kind of being like, but I really just want to see where I can go because I don't want to limit my potential because I don't know what I can do.
Yeah.
And once I start to really exercise and see that, then I think I can make a more informed decision about that. So until then, that's just going to be, the sky is the limit. Now, musically, I would really like to take that off somewhere. So even if I am doing like physical therapy, I'll probably be like making music on the side and stuff. But I really want to take that as far as I can. I thought about maybe like being a national anthem performer on the side, and so like just like most sporting events like need somebody to sing the national anthem, and if my schedule permits it, I think that's something that's pretty like manageable and easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like to sing. I think my ultimate singing goal, I would love to sing the national anthem at a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. I knew you were gonna say
that would be so dude, that is like pretty much the biggest stage in the world.
Yeah.
Like that would be so cool.
Mm.
So cool. And not even just with the national anthem, like I really, especially once I'm done with school, it'll be easier. I really want to start like really making my own music, introducing my sound, and just seeing where I can take it, because I've never been told that I can't sing. No one's ever told me, like, anytime I've sang that, I was like, oh, you're so talented. Oh my gosh, you could do so much. Please sing more, do more, do more, do more. And like hearing that lets me know that like it's not just in my head. Like the potential is there, and so if I work for it, if I really take the time to like start posting more content, be more active on social media and stuff, and really send myself forward, I really think that I could take music very far. So I think there's like, obviously there's like the attainable goal, like physical therapy, starting on my practice, doing all this stuff. Like that's like the boom, boom, this is something I can for sure do. But there's also like dreams. And like even when I talked about like vision and stuff earlier, it's like I've already seen myself doing these things. So I think it's just a matter of just taking the time to put myself in the positions to get opportunities.
Yeah.
That way that I can just start take myself as far as I can.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But
I love it. And dreams don't cost $1.
There you go.
So why not dream?
Yeah.
Like funny, well not funny, but very, very realistic line, but from someone that people would never even think about. Lil Uzi Vert.
There you go.
Lil Uzi Vert said, I don't want to wake up. I'd rather dream. That's the way that you stay up. Think about that.
Say that again. One more time for the people.
I don't want to wake up. I'd rather dream. That's the way that you stay up.
That's powerful. That's crazy. All right. Applause to Uzi for that.
I literally have that written in my journal.
Yeah.
Like as something that I continue to read and think about, because it's like, yeah, forget like I'm not just gonna forget all my goals and all my dreams. Yes, like for me, my whole basketball dream, yeah, it's over with. But now I have new dreams.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm gonna put all the work in possible for me to complete that dream.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna stop dreaming.
Right.
And then once I do complete that goal, I want to dream some more, because that's the way that you stay up. That's the way that you get to the places that you want to get to.
I like that.
You see, so wise words from Lil Uzi Vert.
That's really valid. Wow. I think something that's also like, even like thinking about what you just said, is like even the way like dreams are, like how often do people have the same dream every night? Almost never. Like the probability of that is like, the numbers are probably insane, and dreams always change. And I think something that's important to realize is like, yeah, like you may have this dream here, but maybe something happens in life where you can't. Exactly. So it's like, okay, what's your new dream? How does this dream evolve to another dream? And once you achieve this dream, where do you go from there? Yeah. I think it's important too to like for instance, like even if I said like I'd like to sing the national anthem on Super Bowl or something, cool, right? But where from there? If I just limit myself to that, then once I reach that, I have nothing to strive for. Instead of being like, okay, boom, sang at the Super Bowl, right? Cool, all right. Now when they play the USA theme at the World Cup, they're not playing the song. Caleb's singing it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And then you just like further and further and further, and just like keep on expanding on the dreams. Oh, that's what I mean to say, is letting the dreams expand instead of it letting just be just something that's just like, oh, this is my little dream. Just like, no, this is my dream. But then boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Here's this aspect that, oh, no, now my dreams are going and going. And that way you never really feel like I only have one thing to strive for. You can strive for so many different things, and there's just so many different ways that you can find fulfillment in life that
Exactly.
way.
It gives that purpose and, like you said, fulfillment to life.
Yeah.
People always talk about athletes who get to the professional level, whether it's the NBA, NFL, NHL, MLB, whatever league it is, and then they completed the goal, and now they're miserable.
Yeah.
It's like because they don't have a purpose anymore. They don't have any goals. They're not dreaming anymore. Their dream was fulfilled. So where do they go from there?
Yeah.
But then that's when athletes have to learn to have some other dreams, some other goals. Shaq, for example, his dream was to win the championship, all these things, right? And then after he retired, he's like, okay, I made it to the NBA. I made my dad proud. I won championships. I went to the Hall of Fame. Okay, and what's next?
Yeah.
And then so that's when he started all his business ventures and stuff like that. And he's DJ Shaq, what's DJ Diesel, DJ Shaq Diesel and stuff.
He's doing a lot and commercials and stuff I've seen him doing and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that gives purpose to his life now. He's not a basketball player anymore. He's DJ Shaq Diesel. He's Dr. Shaquille O'Neal, the businessman.
Yeah.
You know, so that's something for lots of athletes to think about. Even if they do get to the professional level, it's like your sport is gonna come to an end at some point.
Yeah.
Your identity is going to still shift, and then after you form an identity outside of your sport, and then maybe 20 more years, your identity may shift again. So it's like there's nothing wrong with changing the way you live, changing who you are throughout your lifetime, because that's just basic human development. We don't stay the same person throughout our whole lifetime.
Exactly.
You know, so
we change every day.
Exactly.
Even from a cellular level, like every time we take a shower, we're washing off the dead skin cells of the former person we were. Like that's how I like to see it as.
Deep.
So it's like when you realize that like every day you're changing. So it's like understanding that mentally and letting that be a part of your being is understanding like I'm gonna change. Like it may be uncomfortable, but I'm gonna change. I'm always changing. Like I'm every day I'm becoming another version of myself. I mean, now there's obviously like those core pieces of your being, like like your organs don't necessarily change every day, but your skin, your day to day, that always changes. And I think it's important to realize that like your day to day, like the skin cells that I have now are not going to be the same skin cells I have today from now, 10 years from now. It's going to be that's a whole different person when you really think about it.
Yeah.
So it's like understanding that, I think, is like a better way to orient like your mind and stuff.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, Caleb, we had a great conversation today.
We did.
Like an absolutely beautiful conversation that the viewers will definitely love.
Yeah.
And I just want to say I'm so grateful that you came here today, because this will allow other men to come on the podcast and really feel safe to speak about their own life and to speak about just mental health in sports in general.
Yeah.
And you'll see, you're definitely going to pave the way for lots of athletes. And like I said in the introduction, this is legendary. Like absolutely legendary.
Yeah.
Like absolutely legendary.
I appreciate that, man.
So yeah, I just want to say thank you once again. And thank you for listening to the 3rd episode of the Life Play Podcast. And remember, life is a game. It's all about how you play it.
Yes, sir.